this computer. All right. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining and thanks for viewing. I'd like to introduce Kate Mester. She is the library media specialist and tech champion at Riverside High School, and she's going to talk to us about the power of high school media centers. Kate?
Well, thank you. Hello. It is my 4th year at the amazing Riverside High School in Durham, North Carolina. We're going to talk about Riverside Reads, creating reading culture in a high school library. So it's my 4th year here. I've had now 3 different co-librarians. I have the amazing privilege of having a second librarian. And so I'll kind of talk about not necessarily our journey together, but I've done a lot as a through line, but it's always, of course, helpful to have a partner in the work. So kind of 3 main pieces that I'm going to talk about here are collection and space, right? The pieces together, teachers and collaboration, and book recommendations. So this can be an audience for everyone. So whether you are a librarian, a parent, a teacher, there is something for you here. This is going to be recorded, but I'm interested in this feedback anyway, just from who we have. So one of the pieces, if you want to try this, people that are here, is going to menti.com and entering code 4072578, 4072578. And what we're looking at is, what does a high school library media specialist do? People in the room are kind of a packed audience. I think we have an idea. But when we say that, I'm always curious about what people bring with them to that idea, right? What do you think a high school library media specialist does? So I'm going to pop out of the presentation and go into Menti for everyone. And if you enter that code, to allow you, to put in your answers. Maybe 7257. That's super weird. Maybe I should have practiced this one more time before I did it, but it worked last month. I do swear. It didn't work for you either.
We could answer in the chat, Kate.
Yeah, please do. Well, this is what happens when a month goes by and you haven't practiced this part. I swear that works, but I will look at that code. But feel free to, yes, let's just answer in the chat. There's not many of us. So hello, there are a lot of dings. If you were just joining us, the question is, pulling up. When we say high school library media specialist, you think what? A word or two, an idea? What do you think a high school library media specialist does? One answer is everything. A ringer there, that person is also a library media specialist. Help teachers curate books for classes. Connection and expansion. Ooh, I like that. Yes, yes, and yes. Help kids find their books, right? What it is. I always say that's their jam. You don't ever yuck somebody else's yum, right? Like, what is their thing? So book talk, awesome. That's what this is about. I love connection and expansion because it's really broad, and that's about reading, but also about instruction, but also about just being an information specialist, right? How do you connect people and ideas and instruction in your school? Keeping people connected to what's new. A safe space is one in the chat. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, right? How does your space talk to kids? So at my high school, I have almost 1,800 kids, and I am a lot to words, and kind of seeing what people write about me, that kind of comes out. People say it in a positive way. They say excited and excitable, which I love. But if enough people are saying that, that means the brand is working and people are getting that. So like I go out and act like this all the time. So kids are like, oh, library lady. But it's also important to me that if I can't talk to every kid, what is my space? What is the library saying to that kid? Yeah, welcoming and connecting. That's awesome. Thank you. So there are standards. Why, yes, friends, we also have an evaluation with standards. We have master's degrees and we are instructional certified teachers and partners. So here are our 5. They closely match to a teacher evaluation. Not going to read them at you, but kind of the important one to pull out here that we're going to be talking about today is 4C, which is media coordinators promote reading as a foundational skill. So to me, this is really important at the high school level because it is important to remove barriers for kids to sort of find their inner reader. Because depending on their experience from elementary and middle school, they already have an idea of themselves as a reader, and oftentimes it's not necessarily been shaped by them, right? It's been shaped by testing, or whether they've been told that they were lacking or needed remediation, right? These kind of internalize the narrative for them. And then also, this is the time where like things get wild, right? Is it's no longer particularly a class. And oftentimes that can be a barrier too. So like if people aren't bringing their kids, you'll see kind of reading stop. And again, that's not about the kid, that's sort of about how we run an institution. All right, how do we build this reading culture then? What do we do? So here are 4 pieces in creating reading culture with your mission and your collection. So the first thing you have to do is your library is not separate from you, right? Librarian tends to be a feminized profession, and we're really good at not talking about who is doing the work. I do it too. I've probably said it a bunch now. I say the library, as if I, the librarian, am not the one, like the engine that is doing the work, right? So you have to really think about what is your why? Why are you doing this? How are you reflective about what you do? And is your space and the collection reflective of that mission about your school and about your kids? And is it inviting? So someone put that in the chat, right? So that's what I said earlier. Who is it welcome for? Who is welcomed into this space? So when I can't talk to every kid, what messages are students seeing from my space about who is welcome, who is the space for? And be brutal with it, but in a beautiful way, right? Junk, get it out. Who is that serving? Is it serving like our own kind of need to hoard? Or I have some teachers that I love that love a good hoard. Or is it that we just are a little afraid of empty shelves or for whatever reason, right? We always have to think about our kids deserve the absolute best. And if it's not good enough for XYZ, it's not good enough for them, right? So if it's old and problematic, let it go. And grow your specialty areas. So a little humble brag, we have on record the largest Spanish language collection of any Durham public school right now, in part because we have the biggest ELL collection, but also because, or ELL population, but because we've really worked to build that. We've worked with our ELL teachers, we work with our students to ask what they want. We've made grants for that. So we also, right, do our Spanish kids deserve less because their language that they read in is not English? Absolutely not. So we want to build them kind of the same amount of things that other people have access to. And the same thing about specialty populations. So we have a really big college and career section because that's really important in high school, right? Having test prep books, having AP books, having books that you think about what you're going to do, what's your next step. All right, so this speaks to the why. So with those 4 topics, I'm going to kind of go through this. If you are not from Durham, real quick, here's sort of our demographics about what we have in Durham and who is doing the work for kids. And you kind of notice where that data lies, right? They look like me, and particularly librarians look like me. We tend to, not always, but the majority of us are white women, right? Which means that in particular, our students do not look like us and are not like sharing the same cultural experiences. So we really need to think about who we're doing the work for, and again, examine our why, our own internalized biases, and make sure that that's not playing out in the work we do. So here's some quotes from Chris Endon. If you've not read For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too, strong shout out. But kind of at its base, there's a lot of amazing gems in there, but like at its base, right? Look at the third one. You can't teach someone that you don't believe in. So like, again, I really say the root is going to the examining of like what you really think and why you're doing the work. And then of course we have the greatest of all time, Dr. Radine Simmons Bishop, who talks about books being windows as mirrors, and windows, did I say windows? Books being windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. People reference this all the time without giving her the proper credit. But so that's really important, right? They have to be able to reflect their own unique experience, but also be able to earn empathy and reflect on other people's experiences too. Yes, Chris Endon on Instagram. So this is kind of a graphic that shows what books can be, right? I was a kid that grew up in Illinois. We did not have money in my family, but this was how I traveled, right? This is how I understood words. This is how I understood other people's cultures and my very insular one. And it's very much shaped who I am because I was a reader kid. All right, so again, what it's not, right? My biggest pet peeve in this is giving kids a voice. We don't give kids anything. Kids are fully formed humans, right? We can amplify that, but we're sure not giving them a voice. And what it is, right? So we see kids for who they are and we value that. All right, so what does this look like? Again, my library is from 91. And so there was a lot of, that's when the school was built. So there was a lot of like, what are my external messages? So I made sure that every space had signage in all languages. And then it was very clear that it was a welcoming and safe space. Again, junk out, goodness in. Kids were helping with that. Those plants are no longer there. Y'all, I'm a notorious plant killer. Who would give me plants? But we're building those pieces. And it's not foreign languages, right? It's world languages. Who is that foreign to? So you can see our stats below. These pictures were a work in progress. Okay, questions about collection building pieces. So you can't do any reading, right? If you don't have what they want. And we'll talk more about recommendations in the third part of this. At any point, I mean, you can unmute yourself. You can also put that in the chat too. Oh, for sure. Kids always, so there's a question in the chat that kids help. It is my theory that it is totally their library. It's not mine. I just help them to curate it. So we always have suggestion boxes. We buy whatever they ask for. And they're the ones that run everything. I am losing my mind without my student library crew. They process, they want to help. And that's the buy-in. I have kids that proudly identify themselves as not library kids, that actually are library kids that live with me that want to help because they love the space and they love the work. So what are we doing and what does that look like teacher-wide, right? So it is a space, but also it's collaboration, right? It's programming throughout the school. So right now, it looks a little different in the year we've had, but we're gonna kind of recreate this now that we're gonna be back in the building. So we have Riverside currently reads and Riverside recommends. I'll show you some pictures of that. So every adult in the building from the principal on down has signage about what they're currently reading. And we have book talkers in the library. We really invest in literature circles. So I've done trainings for the last 2 years with English language arts and the English language learning team, but also with the social studies team. They do graphic novel lit circles. We do that with clubs and faculty, etc. And I do a ton of book talks. Absolutely, the book talks are linked in here. So let me just pull some up. So when I make book talks, I talk about books, but also I use book trailers, right? Publishers spend a lot of money on these, so I always include them. So there are a couple examples in here of books I talk about. I always switch it up. Let's see, for this class, they came to me every 2 weeks. So I would remind them about the 10 we talked about on this date, the 10 we talked about on this date, and then we talk about a new 10. I usually do 10 at a time. So there are a couple samples in there. What that looks like virtually in our virtual library, and we'll talk more about this too, I just pulled this up. So we have a Bitmoji library that's virtual. And so because it's already a slide set that lives on the website and in Canvas, we've even made additional slides by genre that are quick book talks that you click into, and it takes you right into Sora that kids can read and check those out now. And we have them by genre, but when we work with classes, let's see, you'll see a couple slides here that we change in and out when we work with classes too. Thank you for asking that. And book buffets and speed booking, exactly what that sounds like, right? So when classes come in, I'll have a bunch of tables around and sort books by genre. It's infinitely sortable. And so kids can just sample that. They take a clipboard around and write down stuff they want. You're not going to find books without touching books, right? Books aren't going to be like, hey, I'm actually really good. You should read me. So as much as you can get kids into touching, looking at, thinking about. And the same with speed booking. So I just put a timer up. They have a stack of books. They spend 2 minutes with the book and then we move on. It's like speed dating for books. What that looks like. Okay. So we made self-checkout. I'm never checking out a book. That's what the kids do. It's agency and also privacy, right? It's their own prerogative to check out what they want. We started adding in every age loves stickers. So any books you check out, for that amount of books, you get stickers to add to our stick together that we build. And so kids were obsessed with this. And then I would always make them come and do the, what I call the art critic. You got to get close and ponder it. You got to walk away and ponder it. And then guess what you think it is. We got so close before we went out last March. I think we can all guess what we think it is. So this picture was taken when when school stopped, kind of, right? Our like photograph of a moment in time. This was the day where we learned we were going to be out for what we thought was 2 weeks. Just kidding. It was now a year. And I was like, y'all, come on down. So we checked out 600 books just that one day. Like kids were taking bags. Did we get them back? You know what? Not all of them. Did I know that was very likely going to happen? Yes, it did. But I would rather have readers than books, right? Books I can replace. I will figure that out. If those books are living good lives, I love it. Here's some examples of our currently reading signage. So every teacher has the one on the bottom right, but what I call the level up currently reading sign is you can put your Bitmoji or a picture and then put your book covers around it. So our principal had the level up, our instructional coach had the level up. Obviously, I'm gonna flex real hard. So my level up was an entire wall behind the desk in the library so kids could come in and look at that. Here's what I mean by Riverside recommends book talkers, right? It's kind of like what they do at bookstores. So kids would write things that they liked about the book, and then they would have that there, and kids loved filling that out. And then this, I built this, I didn't include, oops, sorry, pictures on this, but I made this, we have this ridiculous, super old circulation desk, again, 91. And so I cover it in chalk paint. And so like every month kids would draw new things around a theme or we'd change it up all the time. So this was when it was Riverside Recommends. And kids do all that, art kids come and do it. Kids love adding stuff. Jira always cracked me up. It's really good and you'll be shook, but also true, that entire series. So the class earlier that I mentioned that was coming every 2 weeks, we had a really special relationship because that teacher just let me run with them. She talks a lot about how I've changed her instruction. So she's now gone from like one novel, one kid to lit circles. And that took a lot of trust in how we built it, but it has fundamentally changed how these kids read. If you look at my buddy Leo at the bottom left, like this kid would proudly admit, like, I haven't read a book before, like I never finished anything. By the end of this class, he had read 2. We were talking about it. He even still has some. He's like, Ms. Mester, I finished this book. And then he'd get up and tell the class about it. I'm like, yeah, man, like you're a great reader. This is really awesome. So we were trying to make some read posters around the school. Quentin up top, ask him about Gucci Man. He will go on. He has sold that book, I think even more than I have, and like having everybody read it. So this is really important to me too. It's not just me that's talking about books. It's teachers talking to kids about books. It's that culture creation, right? The like kids want to talk about books with everybody they encounter and they want to talk about it with each other. Like Who wants to hear about books more than kids to other kids? Here's an example of lit circles in the library. That was in our old carpet. What it actually looks like in class, right, when they have dear time. This is an example of book buffets. Again, infinitely customizable. If you have teachers doing author studies, right, or doing biographies, you can customize what categories you put out. This is an example of speed booking. So again, like they'd have stuff there and they'd fill out their opinions about the book to themselves. Ooh, that was in our, we have new carpet now and some things have changed there. All right, and finally, book recommendations. So when I was talking about how you get this information out to kids. So we have our Bitmoji library that I showed you. Teachers put that in Canvas and we have that as well. We have Sora that's new this year. I'll show you some stats on that. And that's the library 24/7. We are doing Instagram book recommendations. So there's a theme in our stories every day. And then of course, Battle of the Books as well. We just finished that competition a week. Ooh, it's been a full week ago. Second again, but we were really close. And we work on that all year. I had 30 kids that wanted to do that this year, which just really shows how much that's grown and the power of reading. So this is our virtual library. We've been changing it up a bunch, but again, it's important that it reflects our physical space and that it's welcoming. And there's so many resources for kids. These are some examples of our Sora displays. So Sora, again, is an online reading platform that we have now this year, and we will have going forward. It's such a great resource. I'm really excited that we have it. And so we build in collections like we would in the library, right? So like anti-racist reads, graphic novels, Battle of the Books. Again, anything that talks to kids and are like, read this thing over here, just try this out. To that end, I will be really, really proud about our Sora data. I just pulled this today to make sure it's the most recent. We are number 2 in all 53 schools in the district about our Sora checkouts. Hype and hustle. That is going into classes, talking about Sora, talking about books. And then once kids have access, they run. Like one kid has checked out 45 graphic novels already this year. They just need to know it exists and then they run at it. And I love that. So you see some example of our reading data over time. And you can even see it track to when myself and my co-librarian go into class. So we hype it, kids learn they have access, and then they will start reading on their own. So it's just one more way for kids to take ownership, right? Like I want them, the way I always hype it is, we're not ever telling you what to read. So you get to pick whatever you want. I read books for children. I read books for teenagers. I read books for middle grade. I read books for adult. Like you can read all of that too. There is no level for that when you get to choose. And if it is junky, quit. Life is too short to punish yourself by reading books that are not fun to you. Like we have thousands of books. Don't beat yourself up about it. Like that is how, again, we want to create readers that care about it and they need that permission. And then we also have holds. So our physical collection obviously still exists. We want kids to get books. So we make these same collections and recommendations in Destiny Discover, and then kids can go in and put holds in. They pick it up from school or we drive it around if they request that. I have driven all over Durham, dropping books off to kids. Oops, sorry. And this is just some examples of our Instagram stories about how they line up. So like Mixtape Mondays is a song with a book. Here are pictures of Bob over time. Bottom right is this past year. You can see the last 2 years we were virtually Dewey decimating. And finally, here are just some suggestions about how you can, if you are not a teacher or librarian, right? Like how do you then bring this kind of culture to your own household or maybe even to your own classroom, right? Modeling is really important. Are people seeing you read? Are you talking about books, right? And where can you do that? Like have a family book club. Do an audiobook in your car if you're driving around. That's a lot of how I read, it's audiobooks. Also, just quick pause, graphic novels and audiobooks are reading. They are legitimate books and your brain lights up in the same way for audiobooks. So don't ever let people tell you that reading with your ears is not the same as reading with your eyes. Obviously tie-in movies is a huge hype for teens, right? Because that's where the money is. So yes, let them continue to make all of these like Netflix shows on books and then hype the books. There's free author events everywhere from all of our local bookstores. Quail Ridge does awesome stuff. Regulator does awesome stuff. Of course, our local library does awesome stuff. And then find good books. So that's what we hear a lot from parents is, I just don't know where to start. Ask us. Firstly, I would love to be asked by a parent, like, what am I reading? Or what would be great for my kid? The High School Battle of the Books list, that's linked here. I am on that state committee. I'm so proud of our list this year. I'm proud of it every year. I've said this year is my favorite. I think I also say that every year, but truly this year is my favorite list. Durham County Library has teen suggestions too. If you're not familiar with Project Lit, it is exactly like the name says. It is middle school and high school lists that our own voices authors, and there's some of my favorite books every year. And a lot of them make the battle list as well. So you can follow them on Facebook or Insta. And then of course the Oscars of books for teens and young adults, the ALA Youth Media Awards always has some really great picks. So all of that is linked in here as well. And of course, follow along with the journey, right? RHS Pirates Library is our Insta. We're at Pirates Library on Twitter. We would love to see what you're doing and take suggestions. All right, that was a lot of very fast talking from me. So thank you, everyone. If you have questions in the chat or unmute yourself or anything else.
Kate, what's been your biggest struggle? Like a glow and a grow. What's been your biggest growth since March 13th of 2020? And what do you feel is your biggest success in this year like no other?
Yeah. I think there's no other way to answer that than what the role is that we talked about at the very beginning, right? When I said I was the media specialist and the tech champion, we grew by 500% of our tech without people. And so knowing that, I even had a conversation with my principal at the beginning of the year when we were doing this. And she's like, I think you can start being a librarian again. Let's hope for October. And like, yes, but also what a bummer, because don't kids deserve both, right? Thankfully, we were able to get started much sooner than that because over my dead body, am I not going to at least do my level best to give kids as much library experience as possible? So we had a lot of things set up. But with that said, there are pieces that I wish we had time to set up proactively. So the virtual library we demoed not as soon as I wanted. Also, my timelines for myself are maybe I would not hold other people to these same standards and timelines. But that's how I grow. I constantly like want to be doing more and greater things for our kids because they deserve it. So I would say I wish we had gotten to some of those pieces earlier. We're getting our Canvas library together now. We've had the virtual library together. I wish some of these pieces that we had done. I mean, not like I predicted a pandemic. It was like, oh man, I need to have these things all ready to go. But I will say from a pride standpoint, all of these things just make us better and expand our reach, whether we're in school or out of school. So like Sora is here to stay, and it will give kids opportunities to read. And that's always great, right? And the same with some of these structures in virtual libraries. And I'm really proud to see, I mean, #2 in the district for checkouts in Sora is, I included that only because like that, on days when things are really, really bad, and I'm like, oh, we have not had this kid connection and like everything's been on fire, but like, look at this. Okay, yay. Kids are getting like it's happening. And I think that I have to have that mindset because ours is a job, if you were a librarian, that's built on relationships. Every teacher's is. But we're the third place, right? So we're like the aunt or the uncle or the like auntie, the friend. And so because we have that side relationship, it's built on, you know this, right? It's built on, you collect kids, hallway kids, oh, my favorite. Hey, buds, come on down. Or just kids around, and you can't, no kid is going to accidentally stumble upon me in Zoom, right? They're not like, oh, I have a question. I'm just gonna go down and ask that library lady. So not having that, right? Having to push in classes and not everyone has time and that kind of piece. So seeing that level of growth because, yeah, it was a cool, yeah, has been really exciting. And I think we'd be in a different place had I not built this culture for the last few years where teachers are expecting that in a great way, right? And like had that same kind of trust and are like, can you come to our class? But that also means I haven't gotten to the number of classes that we've wanted because there's just been so many other things. So I'm really proud of how we've adapted and what we've done, but also I want to have done more and wish we were doing more. Yeah, thank you for that.
Does anyone else have any questions
Please.
they'd like to ask Kate? She's a fast talker. She can answer a lot of questions.
I know. I did not slow that down at all for the recording. Sorry, people. Depending on audience, I will definitely modulate. I did not for this. So if you were listening on recording, you might want to hit it at the 0.8. Sorry.
Question: what are you reading right now?
To say, yeah, everybody friend everybody else on Goodreads. I have that in my email signature, and our new principal is a super reader. If I put everything in the blender of like what I wanted for a principal, it would probably come out this. So it's really very exciting. She put that in her Goodreads signature, and I was like, yes. She talks to people about her favorite book, and her background is her own bookshelf. So I'm thrilled, yes, that we have at the helm a super reader. What am I reading right now? Secondary to you asked that question, then I'm going to blank on the name of the book. It's a second in a fantasy series. What you find, the data shows, right, is that when things get harder, pandemics / other things happen, people read more fantasy because don't we all need an escape world? We Free the Stars. So it is, you know this one, right? It's Arabian fantasy, like ancient Arabian fantasy from an Own Voices author. And I listening to it because I love the audio narrators, but also I have it at 1.4 because it's 18 hours long and I need a fast talk. And then the new Miss Marvel series, they have a new author. And so that just rebooted. I usually have like one graphic novel, one physical book, and one audiobook going at a time. I'd have that up at the library. I'll have to recreate it now that we're.
Where did you get your RAM upgrade? Because I don't think I got that RAM upgrade. If you're able to multi-read like that.
Yeah, my goal last year was 115. I think I hit 117 books. I'm a little behind this year. Truly audiobooks are it, man. That's why I try and hype them to kids. When I'm driving, audiobooks. Dumb tasks like folding laundry or doing dishes, audiobooks. Slapping on a 10-minute face in the morning, audiobooks. Like I always have one going. I always have it on my phone. So that's why I hype it to kids too, because you can get them on Sora and put them on your phone for free. Walking the dog, audiobooks. Or if you have a dog that doesn't freak out at other dogs and you have to constantly stop, you could potentially listen to an audiobook. Yeah, free from the public library or your school Sora account.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Kate?
This is the section before. It does not currently look like this, but let's pretend in its hey that the library looks like now. Thank you for listening to my fast talk. If you think of anything, follow us on Instagram. I'm happy to take your questions.
Yeah, Alexander added in the chat that there's so much great stuff going on in your library. And thanks for sharing. Thanks. Yes, thank you for sharing. So
like this forced me to look back and be like, oh, good. Whew. It makes you feel like, have you ever done anything? Do you know anything? Are you doing anything? So thank you for this opportunity to be like, oh, there has been some positive progress. Great. So I need that for myself too. So thank you.
And thanks for sharing with us. So I want to thank Kate for sharing her fabulous library adventures with her students and the teachers and principal. Because I think that's really key of creating that culture of reading, like, you know, the name of your presentation is creating that culture in the school. makes a difference for everybody. And so thank you, Kate, for sharing with us. Kate Mester, our newest Bull City Literacy Council member.